podium, sir. Thank you very much, everyone. I wish us a good session and a good day. Well, how you want to do this is all on you, sir. But one thing I know, your seat will be in the middle. I think when we count from the extreme, 1, 2, 3, the fourth one, you're going to sit there if you want to stand there, if you want to be here, but definitely you will be seated at the end of the day. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here and also to be the moderator of the very first panel. Let me invite the panelists and the presenter for this session, and after they've seated, I will then join them. I will start by inviting Barrister Honorary Engineer Chedu Ubo, Managing Director of Niger Delta Power Holding Company, a sponsor of this event, and also an expert in this industry. Chedu has been in this industry from the beginning of reforms at BPE, and we will be looking to his experience in this panel. Secondly, in no order of protocol, but just as it appears on my page here, I would like to invite Engineer Beli Jamadu, key presenter and currently a Power Africa consultant working on World Bank sector recovery programs. Third, I would like to invite Mr. Matthew Saba, who is Head of Finance at Mainstream Energy Solutions. Next after that, Engineer Simeon Atakulu, an industry expert, fathers of this, one of the fathers of this industry, a former executive director at the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, and currently a senior energy strategic advisor to the World Bank on power sector recovery. And finally, it gives me a great pleasure to invite the person who I know is my senior brother, my chairman, one of the first people I met in the United States before I came back to Nigeria, people who inspired me, gave hope to the fact that this industry is on reform. Dr. Ransom Owa, the first chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. And, okay, he's the last of the physical being. There is someone who's joining us on virtually. That is Mr. Longe Yusuf Alonge. He's the Director of Business Development at Globalec. He's joining us and is unable to be in Abuja. Do we have him?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm online. Yeah, I can see and hear you guys.
Okay, we can hear you, but we cannot see you. But that's good enough.
Okay.
Apart from before Globalec, Longe was with Black Rhino, developers of the Kwaibo IPP project, and before then, he was head of commercial and technical at the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC. We worked together for close to 5 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will not take much of your time. I think what we will start with is an introductory presentation by one of the sponsors. Barrister Ubo, are you ready? He would have a 5-minute presentation, and after that we have the key presentation by Engineer Beli Jamadu, and after that we can go into questions for our panelists, and then definitely also have a conversation with the audience, taking questions and then comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. You forgot to tell them that you were my MD at Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading. You just mentioned BPE. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been called upon to make a very short presentation, and I've been given 5 minutes by the chairman of the organizing committee, who, by the way, is the general manager in charge of my operation and maintenance at Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited. So he is the chairman here. He has decided to keep me 5 minutes. When we get back to office, we sort that out. I've been asked to give some highlights of generation challenges from another perspective. I think the intention is because we are still publicly owned, that's government owned. How does it move? Where do I point it? It's not moving. Okay, you just responded. Maybe it's your sensor is with you. So I will just quickly, I have a few slides, not more than 12 slides. I will try to do 2 slides in a minute, or 3 in a minute, so that we'll meet. Nothing unusual. Most of the things have been spoken about by the goodwill speakers earlier in the day. I'm sure you have to add this to my minutes. For us at Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited, I think that's one of the reasons we've been called upon. We are actually the biggest in the country and perhaps in West Africa in terms of gas thermal generation. We have 8 power plants already completed and tied to the grid. We have 2 that are under construction. We still have part of the 8, 2 again that are also part under construction. You can see that in the slide being shown. So we have a total of 3,585 installed. The 3,585 is at site condition, site ambient temperature at 31 degrees. But if you want to take nameplate, it's about 4,000, slightly above 4,000 megawatts. So we have that fleet already installed and tied to the grid. So we are in a better position to explain or to talk about the generation challenges, having been operating these power plants even before the privatization. Of course, because the nature of the funding shows that we are owned by the federal government and the states in Nigeria. Prior to privatization in November 2030, NMPSR had 2,460 already installed. Of course, I've said that so far we have 3,585. And of course, 787 is still under construction. Despite these achievements, operations are hampered by a number of challenges, which I will discuss shortly. Of course, it's been mentioned every now and then, the T&D challenges. We presently have, during the contract activation last year, I think we have a base load of about 5,500. That's for the whole country. And NDPSC was allocated a space of about 975 megawatts. That's peak for us. So out of our 3,500 thereabout, we are only, transmission is only able to take 975 from us during peak and 757 at off-peak. Despite that, we are often substantially mechanically available. This evacuation limitation is also, even when you are tied to the grid, you have frequent starts and frequent shutdowns, ostensibly for frequency and load control to ensure system safety and reliability. But of course, they result in increased turbine stress serious turbine stress, more unscheduled outages, and because of equipment failures, and of course, significant maintenance costs. These are some of the outcomes or some of the consequences of the way the grid constrains us. It's not just the transmission, the transmission and distribution as well. But even this 975, the major challenge we have is that even if we have that space, we do not have gas to even meet up the 975, unfortunately. The only power plant with full gas supply is, well, because it has firm contract, is Calabar power plant, the so-called Gas, the so-called World Bank PRG, and that's because it has a firm security. In gas business, the gas supplier is more interested. If you want security of supply, then there has to be security of payment. We can't run away from that. And from our experience, if you don't secure payment, nobody's going to give you gas. Our plants in the Western Axis, we've been given a space of 535 out of the 975. 535 is megawatts for Western Axis. We need about 150 million SCOF. After so much struggle, we were able to get maybe 113 thereabout because they require stringent security for payment, and that we can't provide. The go around, we have to post 1 month payment, prepayment, and it has to be revolving. So you have to put the money, instead of the credit, you have to pay way ahead. And it's a serious burden on our cash flow. Gas supply is further challenged. Gas pressure on NGSC pipeline is a serious one on the ELPS and Obena-Jokuta line. It's a very, very serious one. It's making the turbines not to perform efficiently because you are running after an hour, the pressure goes down, you have to go down. Same thing like the transmission asking you to shut down and go up. So these are some of the operational challenges. Another major one is the cost of gas. A lot of people who want to supply gas want $2.50. The regulator is approving $2.18. It's a major issue. Who bears the balance? Generation companies are cash flow. Our margin is very low. We can't accommodate that level of balance. Another challenge, and that's the inefficiencies. It's been talked about the liquidity in the sector, liquidity challenge in the sector. Just to say that, suffice to say that the huge indebtedness is in billions, at least for NMPSR alone, and for generation companies, I think it's in trillions now. It's in billions for unpaid invoices, and that's for energy generated to the grid. Of energy generated, metered by the market operator, who is here, I saw him a few minutes ago, and put in the grid and consumed. I guess because of the losses down the road, the distribution companies are not able to pay in full, and of course, MBET becomes surplus except for the federal government intervention every now and then. Another point is the availability payment. We don't get availability payment, and I don't think, apart from JV IPPs, I don't think any other generation company gets availability payment. This is a major issue, and these are the challenges. But this, we are not, okay, so there is a risk mismatch in the sector. I have said that molecules, even from gas to energy, should flow in equal velocity with risks properly allocated across the chain. A lot of the risks are left to generation companies, take or pay risk, payment risk, availability payment, all of that. Startup, we have several startups in a day, not to talk of in a year.
Time.
Yeah, okay, I will just round up now. Yeah, I will round up now. So these are major challenges. I have put, Rumi, just give me a minute, please. Let me just say this. Sorry about that. Despite this risk, we at NDPSC, we saw these challenges early, very early in the stage, and a lot of interventions have been made in transmission and distribution. Projects, I've listed the projects, tons and tons of projects we did, but we also discovered now that this, even with this, there's still a lot of investment required to be made in the sector, a lot of investment required. Even with all the government interventions, there is need for urgent private capital mobilization. And I'm saying again that we need to explore independent transmission projects, starting with GENCOs. There's nothing stopping GENCOs from investing in transmission and, of course, operating it and, of course, getting some level of recovery there. And, of course, we need to intensify bilateral contracts, which we are doing now, and which is being led by His Excellency, the Vice President, who is the chairman of our company. I mean, all of us saw what we did in Agbara. So the cluster financing, the cluster supplies, the last mile solution, I think that is the way to go, and to ensure that the stranded energy in the power plants are off-taken and, of course, get to at least businesses to start with, so that the power plants don't just remain and investments don't just remain idle in the power plants. I've said that despite all the investment we made, even up till now, no return, no recovery, whether by TCN, whether by NDPSC, whether by DISCOs, with the interventions we made in transmission and distribution. And I've called that muted subsidy. So the industry is yet to, and I've made this point before, the industry is yet to even understand its full cost, in terms of supply to end users. We have this huge investment of over $2 billion. There's no recovery yet. The investment are being used to serve customers. It is not accounted for in any way. Those are some of the thoughts we need to put in place, or we need to talk about. I've discussed the bilateral, and that's the way to go. I think I can safely stop here. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for him. Thank you. Without wasting more time, I would invite Engineer Belije Madu to give us his presentation. Belije would appreciate if you could keep it to 10 minutes so that we can have time for the panel and then the audience questions. Thank you.
Wow, the 10 minutes is not contractual. The contract we had is 15 minutes when I was engaged. But if you could put up the presentation, I will start and try to go as fast as possible. Okay, so essentially, I'll go through the privatization, post-privatization, key achievements. And a lot has been said about how the privatization has not delivered our own expectations. But a lot has not equally not been said about how the privatization has made some progress. Because 11 years ago, I used to work in Shell. I came here, just like today, 11 years ago, to discuss about the power sector problems. And Shell left me behind. And since then, I've been trying to solve the power sector issues. Just same goes for a lot of people. A lot of us would not have been in this room and wouldn't have done the work we did in the last 11 years trying to get it right. And when you're building a house, you have to set the foundation. And when you're building the foundation of the house, nobody sees what it is you're doing. I believe what has happened in the last 11 years is that we've been building the foundation of the house, but time has come for the house to begin to climb rapidly so that Nigerians can see that indeed we are building the house. So I'll go very fast. We started off in before 2005, but we had the bill passed in 2005. And the reform was predicated on the need to attract foreign investment, right? In excess of 1.5 billion to 3.5 billion. We knew you couldn't raise this thing locally. You couldn't raise this sort of money locally. So the whole aim was, the privatization was a toolkit. You know, people mix up privatization and reforms. The privatization was a toolkit inside the reforms we were doing, and the whole essence of the privatization was to let local investors come and private investors come in first, such that the doorway will be open for more investors to come in. Now, what has happened is that, you know, hindsight is 2020. You never predict correctly what is going to happen, but I will do some analysis for you. Post, a lot of Nigerians assumed the privatization is the reform. So after the privatization, everybody relaxed and said private sector will solve this problem. that later turned out to be, even in its design, total falsehood. The private sector does not solve your power sector problems for you. The power sector will collaborate with you, that is the Nigerian government, to solve the reforms. And I can give you an example. When we were privatizing, we never contemplated market shortfalls, which is something we are contemplating today and we are providing for in the power sector. We never contemplated market shortfalls. But the market shortfalls hit us in the face because as soon as tariffs became cost reflective, we couldn't adjust due to reasons, and tariff and market shortfalls began accumulating. So essentially, the point to be made is that we need electricity, grid-based electricity, and a little bit of off-grid and some off-grid, because electricity is based on scale. The bigger the plant, the cheaper the electricity to be. You cannot run an economy with generators, simple and short. But what is happening, the point I want to make here is that the generators are still winning the market. The Nigerian generators are still winning the market. In that at the moment, if you went to National Bureau of Statistics, we have approximately 45 million generators in operation. But if you looked at the customer database we only have 12 million people. 12 million customers cannot beat a market of 45 million generators, because at the end of the day, it boils down to unit cost of electricity. And that is why, and you will see that in my recommendation, the power sector will need to come up with a value proposition that enables us begin to take the generator market. Instead of a generator, do off-grid. Instead of a generator, do grid. We need to have that value proposition and that mindset. So essentially, the whole aim of the reform was to have a functional electricity market at the heart of it, where the private sector will play, driven mainly such that we could get money from the consumers and begin to run the sector, right? Entities have been created, but market has not been fully created, right? So you see what has happened, that is, in 2010, availability has increased. Availability increased up to 2018 because I've been looking at the TCN report. We started hitting peak load. But that availability, as far back as 2018, when the investors sensed that the market returns were not coming the way we promised them during the privatization, investors have started taking a back seat, which is culminating in what you're seeing today. So the problem that is faced today in the market and in the sector did not start today. Those who will have the serious conversations should please take note of this. If you solve a problem in the power sector, it has a gestation period before Nigerians begin to see the effect. Essentially, there's been some progress. Let us be honest with ourselves. But it's not, like I said, just like the foundation of the house. Some discos have managed to reduce ETC and seize losses. When we talk about discos, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some have done well. Some gencos have managed to expand their capacity, right? And the sector has been able to attract some funding. People can say it's coming from the CBN and it's coming from World Bank, but the sector has managed to attract some funding, right? And precisely the concept of off-grid, the off-grid industry that never used to exist 11 years ago when I came here, apart from REA, there was no concept of off-grid. The concept of off-grid has been introduced and is taking root. Now, what is the impact? Because essentially, and that has been pointed out, gas, in the short term, gas will have to be a pivot fuel. Why? Because Nigeria sits on a sea of gas. The gas sector is highly developed and highly more mature than the power sector. So we have to use gas as a transition fuel to transiting to other sources of renewable energy. That's the long and short of it. And the gas sector, as you can see, but the gas will not work the way we are doing it now, as has been pointed out. The gas market, as the MD of NGPSC has pointed out, is proven, it's a money-based business. If you do not have money and you don't have guarantees, you will speak the way you've been speaking for the past 11 years, but you will not see congent action. We need to have a financing strategy for the sector such that at the end of every month, whatever gas we consume, we pay for it. And when the price of gas and when the value of the naira begins to change, we must adjust accordingly. It's about willing buyer. It's not even a willing buyer, willing seller market. It's about a market based on liquidated damages. and guaranteed values. And that is the spine of the electricity we supply. So the gas market is set to go, but essentially the way we are running the gas market now will not solve our problem. So we have to change the game when it comes to gas. I'm still trying to make the 15 minutes. So essentially, what are the major challenges we see? The first, a lot of people talk about how the power sector has not been able to replicate what was done in the GSM industry. But a lot of people forget that the GSM industry had a stable macroeconomic climate for like 10 years, right? Without a stable macroeconomic environment, there is no way we can attract and hold foreign investment for the sector, the rates we want. So the first thing is that whoever is responsible, as we are having the serious conversations, we need a stable macroeconomic environment to run for the next 4 or 5 years. Why? Because the power sector in itself requires huge, big financial buffers for the operators and for the players to hold, which they will use in carrying out the projects in line with their promise. If these financial buffers do not exist, then they cannot run. Then, of course, market liquidity has been talked about. The gas supplier, the generation company, transmission company, those of us who sit at the back end, we cannot be giving this electricity and we are not getting the value we are giving. And then, of course, you have the transmission distribution interface issues, which will need to be resolved. And then, of course, you talk about things like alignment of the value chain, which comes with the medium, and long-term planning challenges. Let me quickly move to the solutions. The solution is simple. Electricity is about economics of scale, and it's a science. It's not about your brother or my brother. It's a science. Once you start getting the science right, you will start seeing the output. All around the world, it's difficult to see electricity plant, power generation plants that are small, that are not combined cycle. And it's because when the presenter from Egypt talked about, he kept on talking about combined cycle, how they expanded to combined cycle. The natural thing is that if you have a gas plant and it's open cycle, the cheapest form of additional electricity for you is to convert it to a combined cycle. It's simple. So these units of scale, these economies of scale must be realized if we are to propose to Nigerians a very good commercial value chain, a very good commercial viable proposal that they can use and that we can use to compete. Pipe gas is readily available in Nigeria. It's not a struggle. What we only need to do is to incentivize commercially and financially the suppliers of the gas to give us the gas, right? And then we have to, the point is, sorry, I have to go back so I don't miss anything. At the moment, we have a multi-year tariff order that is supposed to be recovering money for the sector, which is not doing. The whole essence of having an electricity tariff is that at the end of the year, everybody's books balances. At the moment, books don't balance. So it's up to the sector to come up with a tariff model. And I talked about increasing the customer base as one of the measures I recommend. Come up with a tariff model that makes sure that all the players in the sector are made whole equitably at the end of the day. It's fundamental. Then, of course, once you have contracts must be fully implemented. Even if it is 6,000 megawatts you want to start with, once you have 6,000 megawatts of contract, please, at the end of the month, pay the gas supplier and the GENCO. Don't assume that 80% will suffice or will give you 47. Because the very moment you start short paying people, what you're sending is you're sending triggers to the investment world that you are not yet ready to do this business. Then, of course, I talked about there's a need, because at the moment the power sector is sitting on a vicious cycle where we don't have energy because we don't have money, we can't collect money because we don't have energy, we don't have energy because we can't collect money, we can't collect money because we don't have energy. So that vicious cycle will need to be broken. The only person in the room, the private sector will break your vicious cycle for you. The only person who can break that vicious cycle, who has capacity to raise international funding or financing in Nigeria, who has capacity to print Naira, is the federal government. And what I'm recommending is that a power finance corporation be set up. When we this model from, which is the Indian model, in India they have a power finance corporation that later became so successful they are now investing in oil and gas. The recommendation is that the power finance corporation raising long-term green energy bonds should be brought into the power sector as a business model. So for the distribution companies, you can use whatever strategy you want for the distribution companies, but you must have a player in the room who is playing with long-term investment funds. If not, chances are that you'll be caught in the same vicious cycle which you have been caught in the last 11 years. And the second point is that while you are trying to increase your collections, you must be paying the gas suppliers and the generation companies based on the contracts you have with them and based on the capacities they have delivered for you. That you're unable to take the capacity today and you're preparing to take the capacity tomorrow, beautiful. But the bottom line is that you must pay in line with the contract. So the recommended strategy is that we have a power finance corporation to come in to break the financial cycle. Later on, the power finance corporation can get all the shares of the companies, divest, and then return the money to federal government and move on. That is when the market has fully formed and is running. The power finance corporation can then exit the value chain. Then, of course, you need to have, just as the minister pointed out in the morning, you need to have a plan. You need to re-engage Nigerians. If you're going to take enumeration and widen the customer base, you need to engage Nigerians. The recommended strategy is we start with enumeration of the urban centers. Leave the rural areas because the critical people who have the money and who buy generators and who run generators reside in the urban areas. If we start with the critical urban areas in Nigeria and we get our customer base up to 20, 25 million, you will notice that implementing cost-reflective tariffs will not be very difficult. Where we are at the moment is the same point we were in 2014 when the ex-president came in. He was told he needed to make tariffs cost-reflective. But when the cost-reflective tariffs were given to him, he said, listen, this thing will have political implications. I don't want to do it. And then we went to CBN and started borrowing money. And then went to World Bank. And that money today or last week, the House of Rep is now raising inquiry on the money that was raised to meet the tariff shortfall. So the point, how we break this vicious cycle is that we try to increase the customer base based on urban consumers, urban customers that are using electricity. We have 45 million generators, and we can increase this customer base. Even if we get 25 million people, I promise you, the tariff will come down to something reasonable, and it will not be a struggle for the president whenever there's a tariff review, or whenever there's a cost-reflective tariff. It will not be a struggle for the president to approve the cost-reflective tariffs. At the moment, who is aware that I think 2 or 3 months ago, the GSM industry increased the tariffs of data? But nobody notices because they carry a customer base of roughly 120 million people. So when they share it per person, it comes down to something very small. This is the approach that is strongly recommended for the power sector to adopt. And the last one is we need to drive the completion of ongoing PHCN and NDPH projects, especially those that sit on the transmission and distribution interface. We need to put money against those projects. We need to put resources against those projects to make sure that those projects are brought to a conclusion. I think that brings me to the end of within the 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Please, another round of applause for Engineer Belije. That was succinct, quick, and very fast. I have the microphone, and before I pass questions to my panelists, I have 1 or 2 opinions about the presentation. One, the first thing is about reform. You know, it says that reform is to bring the private sector to come and work with government and make it work. That is the tool, as far as I'm concerned. The ultimate goal is to make sure there is more electricity available to homes and businesses to raise business and the social living. So once we begin to forget that, we are doing the review of the tool that we have employed, which is privatization reform, the private sector partnership. That's what I believe we're doing. Because it's very clear on the other end that increase in electricity or the quantity has not happened. If you look at that from that basic perspective, it is easy to say it has failed. But we're looking at other, like he said, the foundations that we are putting in place to get to where we are. The ultimate goal of going into the reform is trying to use the resources of the private sector, the capital, private capital, the expertise, to increase ultimately the electricity supply to homes and businesses. That is the ultimate goal. So for me, when we talk about how well we've done, we've always had this tension over price and tariffs. And why it has been very frustrating is because the quantity has stayed in the same place. So even if we get more customers and have a lot of them, if you don't give them more power, you still end up with a queue that is small, and therefore it will keep asking for a higher price. So that is my, my first intervention. And having said that, and starting with the issue of tariff, we have Dr. Owen here. If the MITO and the regulations are the commandments of the industry, he is our Moses. He gave us the commandment, he gave it to us, he gave us MITO. So my first question for him will be, you know, the MITO has been it is that instrument that should mobilize capital, mobilize investment, and do all sorts as a tariff, as a model. When you put it in, this was before privatization, but it envisaged privatization, and it's been operated 10 years plus now. What, especially on the wholesale level, companies play, what would be your view about its performance, and how well has it done? Should it still be the way it is done, or is there anything that should change about it? So let's get to that issue of MITO, which was one of the things he ended up with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to hold brief for the chairman, NERC, because he's not here. It would have gone to him. However, I think the question is appropriate because I have a historical context of how we came about with MITO. Because as a pioneer chairman and CEO in 2005, we didn't have any frame of reference. In fact, the first time PHCN requested a tariff increase, it was a few pages of PowerPoint. And I couldn't believe it, that is this what you submit for a rate increase? I was just shocked. And so we had no frame of reference. So particularly it took, say, okay, since we didn't have these macroeconomic numbers, let us see how we can encourage generation. And the predominant source was gas power. And we said, okay, for you to attract gas generation, we needed to put in quite a fungible number with enough headroom to attract investors to come to the private sector and generate power. Once they generate power, TCN will remove it, and then DISCOs would get it. So it basically is a power generating model. And I think it has been consistent. I don't know about NERC if they're here. They still base it on the best performing power plant. I think as of now, I would suppose it may be Azura Power. Maybe that's the model that's been used. My colleague has asked this question. If you ask me, it's 10 years later. The business, that model is just the paymaster model, which is used to pay everybody in the sector, GenCos, DISCOs, and the likes. I think that because it's gone up to 10 years, there may be a time for an ex-post review. That's my view. Perhaps the model could be decoupled because you have sufficient information in the market today to see. But I think the prime driver of decoupling is to ensure that each sector, each player they should do their own cost of service studies. I don't think that in the last 18 years, any disco has done an embedded cost of service study that I know of. I'm not sure GenCos have done it either. So if this has not been done, how then are you getting your cost and asking for recovery? I think that MITO is good because it has worked well. People can actually rely on it. But perhaps my colleagues in NERC and all of the advisors can be looking at it to see if it can be decoupled and made it more sensitive to the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. You can clap for him or you can clap for yourself. They say clapping is good for the heart. You know? So help yourself. My next question will go to, I think I'll go this way, then I'll go up virtually, and then I can come back to the two gentlemen who had made presentations. Engineer Atakulu, like I said, you know, we met you in this sector, and by then you had occupied the highest technical positions in PHCN and provided solid advice during the privatization and continue to support the industry. Reflecting on the operations of PHCN power plants and planning and project development, what have you seen in the management of the generation fleet since privatization? Where do you think that things could have been different, or how is it, not just for people who don't know, the significant differences we've seen in the practice in the industry between, you know, pre-privatization and post-privatization? Just a brief reflection on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me put it this way. Whether pre-privatization or post-privatization, the business of power generation is virtually the same. But what is it that drives generation? Generation is a business, and if you don't understand it in the form of a business, that's why you're going to have the kind of problems you are facing today. Pre-privatization, generation, along with the entire value chain, was a government-driven responsibility. It was not meant to be a business, it was meant to be a social provider. So starting from that point, you, at the point of privatization and then post-privatization, there are meant to be basic principles that should drive the growth of generation. Unfortunately, those principles are not being followed, and that is why you have seen the kind of distortion that you have in the power generating business. Let me pause because I've been opportune to do a lot of analytical work on all the successor companies till date. Some of these companies have found very clever and very ingenious ways of growing and maintaining their capacity. Some have not. And what has been the driving force behind this? It is still the market forces. Because some of them are still relying on the old conventional business of power generation. In which case, under the circumstance, you're waiting until there is what I would call a monumental payment structure from increased tariffs, from revenue bases. But some have gone ahead to find more interesting business models. I don't want to go into the details because, except on private consultation basis, some have gone into very innovative business models and generation expansion models that have helped them. You heard the DG. I did most of the sensitization and clarification work that led to some of these companies exiting the performance agreements. Some have not. Some have even gone as far as going to tribunals rather than looking at innovative ways. So my own contention is that power generation is a business. If you allow me, I will just read two very simple statements that would let you understand how the industry runs. The first one is the key for sustainable generation capacity and growth is availability of adequate economic demand. One thing that people have always missed is they keep talking about demand. But what we refer in a generation business is economic demand. How much of this demand, which brings me back to the issue of enumeration, increasing the number of customers, but what is effective in terms of the economic level? Because it is the money that will determine what the generating companies will do to expand. And what other thing do you have to do if you have a backup robust infrastructure? Because the generating companies are going to put the power into an infrastructure. What next is the regulation and market process. How effective is the regulation and market process? I referred to my very good friend when he talked about the issue of MITO, the issue of pricing. I will go a little further to say the MITO is overdue for a complete review, because the logic of MITO has changed a lot within the current market process.
Can you hear him?
Now the second point, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, better.
Now the second point that goes with that, after that, you now make a judgment of your own. Therefore, if you understand the first statement that was made, what drives a generation business? Now, therefore, an electricity market must demonstrate that market designs and operations work to integrate the electricity market and systems operations. What do I mean? You cannot decouple the market from system operation, which is exactly what we are seeing today. We want to have a market, but we don't have a system operation that couple them. And how is this coupled? This is driven by application of adequate contractual linkages in the market. If you don't have this, the generation business will not grow. I think I'll stop at this point.
Yeah, thank you very much. Round of applause. Help your heart. Help your heart. Mr. Saba, I'll come to you. For people who watch the industry, mainstream started off with Jeba and Kainji hydropower plants, and then when the opportunity came for Zungeru, you moved in there and secured that. So something must be doing very well. And then recently, you've also extended through an affiliate into Yola Disco, right? So you're raising money for mainstream. You're there. What has made it possible for you? Everyone says is struggling. Is it just because you're a hydro, or is it governance, or what exactly? Because it should be celebrated that there could be some actually bright spots in what we call a challenging day. So if you could share that experience with the audience so that we get some idea about what works. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rumundak. Mainstream started with 460 megawatts between the two power plants in 2013. Today we're at 1,002 megawatts. I think what has driven this capacity recovery that we have in the last 10 years was our ability to unlock some of the liquidity that, of course, has been trapped in the system. And how did we do that? Barrister Wu has mentioned in his own presentation that bilateral is the way to go. And with the little bilateral we have, we're able to unlock some of the liquidity in the industry. I think for the industry to unlock or to arrive at its full potential, perhaps we should find a way of saying maybe out of whatever is on the grid, maybe 50% should be dedicated to bilateral. That way, more monies will come to the GENCOs, and more investments will come into the system. Of course, we have to raise capital for the capacity recovery and rehabilitation that we're doing. The FIs will not look at us except they are sure of revenue assurance, financial institutions. And this revenue assurance is only possible through a bilateral, the eligible customer framework, which we were able to key into in the course of, in the last couple of years. So looking at our journey so far into Yola and into Zungeru, I would say that our goal and objective is to see how we can maximize the potential in the bilateral sectors, but in the bilateral part of the business, and of course, even within the franchise area of YEDC that we operate in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. A round of applause. So, you know, there is something I hear. There are types of generation capacity in the market, already built and installed capacity that is looking for outlets, right? So you have bilateral agreements that would let that. But can bilateral mobilize the initial capital? That's the question. And Longe, are you with us?
I hear you. Loud and clear.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You're following the conversation. So what we've just heard, both from NDPHT and Mainstream, is that bilateral helps unlock some capital. You've been inside where you were providing guarantees and PPA at MBET to projects that were looking to mobilize debt and equity capital. And now you're an IPP developer. So the question I have for you is that this push into what would come a medium stage electricity market where you have bilateral contracts dominating, what are your views? Do you think that it will catalyze the type of investment? And there is also the talk about where our former agency, MBET, should phase out, because if you have the medium state, then the transitional electricity market is done, and then it should begin to go out. So my question, is the bilateral the only game in the market? Could it do everything to grow the capacity? And lastly, let me leave that other question. Just, yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rumudaka. I think going straight to your question, if you look at the bilateral is not a bad kind of market structure, but there are a lot of things that needs to be considered. Now, if you are saying you have brand feed that already have built capacity in the country, it's easy for them to say, okay, we can go into bilateral maybe because the other system is not working for us. But if you're talking of a kind of a green feed, for a green feed to come into the market and say wants to go into bilateral, a lot of things that needs to be considered. Who am I going to actually deal with directly? Who's going to take my power? What's his person's financial capability? Can the person provide the kind of payment securities that will enhance me to be able to get the investment to put into the project? If those things are lacking, there's just no way for the green feed for you to attract investment for bilateral. But on the brand feed side, it is a complete different board game, and that can easily flow through. Now, that is not to say you don't have some bilaterals that will work for green feed. They could be, because there could be some kind of off-takers that have the financial muscles to say, okay, I will give you the required assurance, I will post some kind of LCs and make sure that you get paid, you see my flow, or we can even say, okay, they kind of they can ring fence some kind of my revenue to give you assurance of payment. All those things are put in place. Then, for sure, you can get private investment. Now, if the country says they want to just focus on bilateral and completely stop the embed model, I think that would be a recipe for complete destruction of the sector. Now, the embed model, though not perfect at it is being operated, is there for a reason. It is the channel through which the government, because we still need the government in the whole power sector to provide some kind of support for it. And that embed structure is really where the government can really play its role. But just that maybe with the way it's being currently operated is not working because there's so much misalignment for it to really give the maximum benefit supposed to give to private investors. But I still think that a combination of both the bilateral and the embed model is needed. And why over time we can say, okay, as we get more people into the bilateral, you can now start to phase out the embed model. But for you to really get in serious greenfield private players into the market, the embed structure is really very important because that's the only way that, because you're talking about people bringing in millions or billions of dollars. Nobody's going to do that and say, I'm going to rely solely on just one bilateral off-taker that does not have control over some kind of political risk or national force majeure that comes into place. So those are things that needs to be considered. But in all, I would say the kind of well-structured both bilateral and the embed model is really what can really help to revamp the power sector. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Just to that point, I think the value of an embed is being able to wear some risks that any other party could not wear. So, for example, in the last 1 month, we saw the slide of the naira against international funds. So imagine if you are trying to rely on that revenue to restock your spare parts or what have you. That 30% slide, I don't think there is any private sector that would say, I will protect you against such foreign exchange movement, but the government could step in there, and that is where I think at times people misunderstand what MBT is there. It's not so that they can pay generation companies when DISCOs should be making the payment, but especially when things like this happen, where neither party should bear the risk, but the government. But let me come back to the MD of Niger Delta Power Holding Company. You run a fleet of assets. You said it, the largest in Nigeria. I didn't know it was West Africa. Thank you very much. So you run that, but you're a public sector entity operating in a privatized electricity market. Regulations have been there and out there. How has it been for you? Have you taken any advantage of some of these moving regulations? And which of the regulations frustrate you? And which ones work for you? And what have you done about it?
Okay, thank you very much, Rumo. Yeah, we are owned, yes, by the government, the states and the federal government, but we operate in the market. We are licensed. All our 10 power plants are licensed, so we are subject to the regulations of NERC. We go to the same market for spares and other consumables in the power plants with the privatized or the privately owned power plants. So all the regulations, actually we are bound by the regulations, there is no exception. We have, the ones we have taken advantage of, we've taken, in fact, we started thinking of the end-to-end solution, of the last mile solutions, even before the regulation came in. We've started that and that is the eligible customers regulation, which, of course, like you mentioned before, because of my past experience life, I knew the arts well, and I thought I could go bilateral with these schools. And thankfully, the regulator also came up with the regulation on eligible customers after the declaration by the minister. So we took advantage of that. We are currently, I believe we are currently leading on that. We have quite a number of portfolio, and it has helped us a bit in terms of our revenue. There are challenges. It's not like a silver bullet. There are challenges, but the challenges are, I think, they are more easier to surmount. They're more easily surmountable than you would have had with embed with generation. I mean, the companies. We in terms of enforcement, we can decide to knock off a customer who is not. Sorry, this thing is what's gonna? It's distracting. Yeah. So the enforcement, right of enforcement, is easier for us. If a customer is not paying, be it a disco, be it just an eligible customer of 2 megawatts, we can knock the customer off without, which embeds, I've not seen embeds being able to do that. So we've taken advantage of that, and we are taking advantage of that. We are working assiduously to make sure we go to this huge, we are leveraging on our portfolio to make sure that we go to these huge industrial consumers, industrial parks, industrial estates, to make sure that we serve them. And you would, I think it's been said here before, you'll be surprised, you'll be shocked to find out that these industries are completely off grid by choice, because of most of them say because of the power quality they were getting. So a lot of investment is required there. Just like Longer mentioned, where we are brownfield, so it's easier for us to leverage on our little cash flow and then do the last mile and ensure that we serve these users. I don't know if that answers your question, if I got that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let me see if we have questions from the audience. I think, yes, okay. There is a question for the gentleman over there. Here's an Otumba Johnson. And then is there any other person? So I'll know when he goes. Where? Okay, there is a gentleman here. I'm looking for ladies. I don't know. Yes, okay, right here. And then behind. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Permit me to stand on the already established protocol. Beleje, thank you for your presentation. Very revealing. But I have 2 observations that I didn't quite see in your presentation that I think should be discussed here. Very germane. I didn't hear you talk about significant.
Sorry, introduction. Your name?
Akinawo Johnson is my name. I'm general manager for contract management at the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, NBET.
Thank you.
I would have loved to hear you speak on aging infrastructure. Most of the power plants, the generation side, are over 30 years old, 40, 50 years. Apart from the NDPSM portfolio of 8 power plants. And Azura, most of these power plants are aging plants. And that poses a big challenge as we seek to reform the sector. Again, the minister spoke about ECN found on some transmission infrastructure. So on the transmission side, aging infrastructure is a challenge. Also, I want to align myself with the contributions of one of the panelists, Yusufu Alonge. The bilaterals are good. Like mainstream said, they are doing well for themselves. But while doing well for yourself, how does that impact on the broader dynasty? If power from the lowest source is traded cheaply, that power was used to blend the blended wholesale price of electricity for the broader good of the nation. So bilaterals are good to the extent that it helps bring power to the users of electricity, industrial, and commercial.
Do you have a
hubs.
question or just an observation so we can make it shorter?
Okay, so I will just make my observation shorter than my question. My observation is that the bilaterals has a potential of stifling the market to the extent that certain costs that are socialized across the value chain, I'll tell you of throw-up cost. The moderator, Mr. Rumundaka, spoke about movement in FX, inflation. So such escalations that are typically socialized within the blended wholesale cost of electricity. Are the bilateral customers able to absorb that and cushion that? So lastly, for the panel, I want to ask this question. For MBET's role in the market, which was to incentivize private sector investment by providing comfort to the investor that when they build their power plant, there is this one off-taker backed by the sovereign, guarantee them that they will recover the cost of the building the power plant and a fair return on their investment. In the evolving electricity market where the push by the commission, the regulatory commission, is to aggressively push the market towards bilateral, while the economics of the sector is not right. I want the panelists' view on how we see the market
Without MBET.
evolving in this scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, here, there's over here, and as you're getting the microphone, do you want to answer that or the hydro, or do you want me to express an opinion?
Well, I can.
Huh?
Let's take it.
Yeah, he raised two questions. First is on the bilateral, but I think Alonge had suggested a hybrid, which is what I meant by the Power Finance Corporation. Because not all the players are of equal strength and have performed equally in the last 10 years, like mainstream. And you equally have to recognize that government has a responsibility to make sure or to grandfather this industry till it can stand fully on its feet. And you also want to make sure that people like mainstream do not suffer from contagion that begins to affect the entire industry due to the people who are performing suboptimally. And that is why we have named that hybrid Power Finance Corporation. Essentially, what it is it's like a private sector, but it does have money, and it is holding the shares of the discos, and it comes in and is beginning to play, but it is also playing the grandfather role in the market. That is the concept of the Power Finance Corporation. And then to talk about aging assets. In fact, that is even the more reason why contracts must be effective. Because when we rely on contracts, we talk about reliability and availability. And if you do not meet the reliability and availability requirements, you pay liquidated damages. So it is even the more, as assets begin to get old, is even an added incentive for the sector that we must now begin to go fully on contracts. So you can begin to have a business conversations and give Nigerians value in the second 10 years of the privatization. Thank you.
Did you want to say something about it? No, okay. I think that what Mr. Akinawa was also talking about is the fact that the hydro tariffs are lower, and that if you use it to blend the thermal, that it will benefit more people than a few people. But you know, for me, that will be being stuck to 5,000 megawatts, right? Because if you grid generation to 20,000, 40,000, then of 1,000 or 2,000 should not be your concern, right? That I think it's focusing on a today market, but looking at much bigger slice of it. If you have 20,000 megawatts and you have thermal at 2,000, how much will their price blend and actually make a difference? So let me, there's a lady right up front here, and then the gentleman, you already have the microphone.
Okay. Good afternoon, and all protocol duly observed. My name is Adeola Samuel, the National Coordinator All Electricity Consumer Protection Forum. I'm representing the Nigerian consumers right there. And my questions goes to the man on the far left of the moderator. I mean, on the left of the moderator.
The keynote presenter?
Yes,
okay.
One of the keynote presenters. He do some comparative. Let me start from the reopening of MITO. I copied from his projections there. And he talked about the fact that the question was later thrown to the man at your right, and that the MITO, has it been used effectively, or does it need to bring about a new model? I want to say that regardless of the price model or strategy of pricing that you can bring into power sector, it is not the pricing that is the problem. It is the operations of the discos themselves. For example, petroleum has been increased over time. As of today, in Lagos, where I come from, is 625, 610. Drivers will drive in, and he will say, I want to buy 10,000 naira. By the time he see that 10,000 naira, he will drive away until it finish. He wouldn't come back. Or he would rather come back in the next 30 minutes, depends on where he's going. If the disco failed to meter consumers, there is no way, because I want to lump it up with the fact that they said, he said that the disco's market and that of the GSM cannot be compared, because the GSM has a microeconomies point of view. It is not that they have better opportunity than the discos. It is just because the discos or the power sector arrangement was not well tailored. One of it is metering. If you are not metered the customer, you cannot get the actual amount you can get from what you are selling, and which boils down to generation. If there is no much sales, or there is no more equipment. So my question is this: is changing of MITO or the price model bring more money, or let the power sector market do the business as it ought to be done? Because even if you change the MITO and to another model, which I believe there is nothing wrong with MITO, the only thing that wrong with it is sometimes the process involved, as stated by the law, is sometimes not followed. But regardless of that, what I am saying is that if the MITO is changed or the model, another model is developed, will it bring money into the sector?
Thank you very much. Let me ask the Pioneer Chair to take care of this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your submission. Let me just say that I think the issue has been a cost-reflective tariff. And everybody said that MITO, as of today, does not capture the full cost recovery and does not allow people to earn a reasonable rate of return. And for a market signal to work properly, that price signal must be there for an investor to come in. When the investor comes in, there must be an exit also for their money. So that if they come and invest in a very opaque situation where there are sometimes, because of the pressures of the system, there are some conniptions and somersault in the regulatory construct, it becomes rather difficult for investors to come in. As I said, initially MITO was designed to attract capital formation into the marketplace to generate power. And from then, everything will cascade down. And if that is still suspect in terms of full cost recovery, it's very difficult. I was the chairman of Port Harcourt Electric Distribution Company, and I know many a times where the company submitted a rate consideration, sometimes the regulator may not even answer you, or they may just say, everybody's still in the market now, we're all price takers. And as a DISCO, as a price taker and others, it's very difficult to attract more money. So the concept is to say, whatever price signal mechanism is used, it should attract recovery. People should see a line of sight, and that is the source of investment. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I just want to, I think I understand where he is coming from, and I think he has a very strong point. But please let me explain that there are two separate, distinct regulatory issues here involved, and both contribute to the liquidity and the revenue base of any company, whether it is generation, transmission, or distribution. Metering is related to your collection efficiency. How much energy you put out, how much you're able to collect within the energy that you put out. But what encourages you to increase your energy, that's what he's referencing. And one of the key challenges that MITO has is a pricing mechanism. When I talk about pricing mechanism, in my opening speech, I mentioned the need to tweak with the MITO. For example, 1% change in the energy levels proclaimed in MITO can cause extreme distortion in the pricing mechanism. So the accuracy of the information that you put into the MITO, for example, the energy levels, the return on investment, will go to affect the revenue requirement of the distribution companies. If the revenue requirements are faulty, I'm not sure any investor will want to come to invest. Therefore, metering is very good. It's essential in terms of giving you 100% collection efficiency. But if you want to grow the business, your pricing mechanism must be right. For example, I'm one of those who are pushing, in addition to the MITO, there should be also the locational marginal pricing. There should be also issues to do with consumption and daytime pricing. All these things go into giving you the actual pricing for the electricity. But one of the most important things is the pass-through responsibility. And that's why the issue of the bilateral contracts that we keep talking about, the beauty with the bilateral contracts is the ability to pass through the generation cost. Because the significant part of your electricity pricing is the generation cost, which comes from the primary energy, which is gas or whatever. Therefore, on a bilateral contract basis, DISCOs can bid for power they can effectively take and sell, and that cost will be passed through by the regulator effectively. Once you do that, the essence of market shortfalls and tariff shortfalls will be almost eliminated.
Thank you very much. I need one question from the lady here, and then we'll begin to wrap this up so that people can get lunch.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashida Ahmed. Okay, my question is talking about the journeys.
Company? Your company or
Okay, I'm the Chief Corporate Services Officer of Viola Electricity Distribution Company.
Thank you.
Now, speaking about the journey so far, Engineer Simon mentioned something now that the previous electricity company was social service driven, and now it's profit driven because it's been privatized to private individuals. And these investors actually need to get return on investment for the investment that they have done. Now, we find out that they have to be accountable to their shareholders, while the government needs to be socially responsible to the people as well. Now, we speak about ATC&C increasing on a daily basis, and the largest defaulter and that is actually causing rise in this ATC&C is the government parastatals and the consumers, because they feel the sector is still social service driven sector. My question is, what are the regulators doing to actually bridge this gap?
You know, this is very difficult because you hold brief for the regulator, you might not get what you need. Yeah, I know there was a time to do a reconciliation with the federal government, but I don't know whether, starting during even fashion last period, but I don't know where that ended. Do you have information?
I am aware that a reconciliation was done by Deloitte, and a report and the discos were engaged in the reconciliation under the office of the DG budget. And I'm also aware that provision has been made to pay. I don't want to move into the recommendations because I was a part of a presentation when the report was presented to the industry, and the discos were engaged before the report was brought to us. But I know that a lot of payments have been made in that direction. So if you have not received your own payments, because I'm sure you were part of the reconciliation, please reach out to people in the Ministry of Finance for your own aspect of payment. But I know it was up until 2021, because the report was presented in 2022. Now, the question is, there was also a recommendation that a transparent platform should be put in place where to make sure that all these bills from MDAs do not accumulate again. Now, whether that platform has been put in place or not is what I'm not aware of. But I know that Deloitte did a robust work around MDA debts to the power industry. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I'm just going to put out this question, and I hope that my panelists, each person could just take 1 minute, and let's close it out and then go for lunch. The privatized industry and the investors came in to a market where the EPSRA was the dominant regulation. Then NMPSR came, and a few other HYPADEC. Now we have the Electricity Act. So, gentlemen, with the Electricity Act, is this more likely to allow generation to grow? Or how do you think, how does that change where we started during privatization and where we're going forward on the back of Electricity Act? Anybody with views, opinions?
We just finished a roundtable conference on this on Tuesday and Wednesday with UKNF. I think the beauty of the whole thing is that it tends to take us back to where we started in 2005 and 2010, and then up to the privatization. The need for decentralization, the need to bring in more players, but at the same time, do not create more regulatory risks. This is the message. But the electricity bill of 2023 has given opportunity for rapid growth of demand. Remember what we've been talking about. What drives the sector is economic demand. And part of it can be played by the states. A lot of states, I've worked with 3 or 4 states. A lot of states have very great potentials that have not been tapped into. And it has not been seen from the point of the national regulation and the national electricity profile. But within the level of the states, there are numerous innovative mechanisms and innovative profiles they can use to increase the demand for electricity and mean economic demand. And when you have economic demands growing, there are investors coming to get into the bilateral contract. I didn't want to go into the details of the bilateral contracts, but this is the opportunity. I've worked, like I said, I've worked with 2 or 3 states, and they're creating what we call the cluster management solution process. And this is a purely straightforward guarantee process that allows small plants. You don't need to build 1,000 megawatts at the start. Those ones you can do over time, but the short-term solutions that come with direct cluster modulation models that are being used, tested effectively by the World Bank in Bangladesh, is the model we are selling to some of the state governments. You can do that. So yes, this is an opportunity for every state to become more innovative.
So, moderator, can I
Let
say
me
something?
quickly add to what my colleague has said. I think that the novating the Electricity Act of 2005 March to what we have now, I think it's an improvement because the sector has grown and it has captured a lot of entities into this particular law. When we started back in 5, just the Electricity Act of 2005, and we didn't have much to do, but going from that, I think my colleague has just said it, the construct and the idea is to ensure that people have some regulatory certainty in the marketplace. And when there's no law, you cannot prosecute anything. Now they've set up a new law that allows state actors to participate, that allows other ideas to come in. But the central theme remains. The industry is not well positioned to supply electricity to the consumer in Nigeria. And so far, nobody's happy with the power sector. The reason is quite simple. The metering issue, I've mentioned it in a different way. The velocity of electricity flowing through the meter to the customer is not equal to the velocity of revenue coming back. This failure of equality is a seminal problem. And that is to say, when we go to the next session of conversation, whose fault is it? Who can actually solve it? We are not yet there, but my humble opinion is that the new act is an improvement from what we had before. It allows people more opportunities and an instrument to say, okay, yes, I'm backed by law. That means states can do it, and they can do any model they want. And eligible customers are there. The minister has done it. So when we begin to talk about progress in the sector, there is progress. But the question remains, when are we going to get power 24/7? This is the big elephant in the room. And I think once we discover this elephant, we will stop chasing mice. And I think that will be my submission. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, if I can say something.
Okay. One minute.
Yeah, I think for me the electricity act is something that is good, but we just have to be very careful because while it has the potential of helping to improve and get more supply or demand within the country, but at the same time, it also creates some kind of fears in terms of the existing players that took part in privatization. Some of them are already afraid that the state governors might do things that might affect their already investment. So there need to be a kind of good kind of awareness and communication for the state government to really know when and how to do the right thing and not to take steps that will further discourage investment in the electricity sector. Thank you.
Okay. But you don't have the mic because I think you wanted to speak to that matter. Okay. Okay, just tell us your name and where you're coming from so that.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Mohammed Adama. I'm a legal officer in the Transmission Company of Nigeria. This is not a question or a comment on the presentation, so to say. It's been fantastically, sort of say, one-sided conversation. We appreciate you, although, but I observed, and I have take a pulse from my sisters, and it kind of bugs me, or my mind, or our mind, so to say. Are there no women truly so capacitated, qualified to be in the panelist? Yes, because we have a lot in the industry, and we are so endowed. And please, can we kindly correct the perception? Thank you so very much.
Very, very good. I will stand that when I saw the first flyer on Power Perspectives platform, I drew the attention of the organizer. There was just one woman and about 18 men on that. And that's why I've always also insisted that she spoke before that period. You are very right on the money. So we will close this panel, and this is the last thing I have to say. Nigeria is still a developing country. As much as we do everything and think about what is driven by the market, we just heard the case of Egypt. And it is something to also think about as we grow our power sector. Thank you very much. Yeah, please, one more round of applause for our panelists, and then, very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator. But before you leave, we'll have you guys to have a photograph. While that is ongoing, I will make a small announcement. We're going to beg all of us, there's another session, and we feel would have loved to just continue, but we need to have lunch. Though it's a late lunch, you bear with us. We'll all go out, have lunch for 30 minutes. If it's okay, we're adults, we'll just do that, and then come back for the second session. But again, we all have the tag on our necks. Please come along with it tomorrow so that you have easy exit. We shouldn't leave it back in our hotel rooms, our homes or so. We should have it with us so that it will just seamlessly, you come into the podium, we start the session. We apologize for all, it's the first day, but we get better every hour. Then again, for that, my sister that made the observation for the lady to be. Honestly, just around the corner, some hours ago, somebody was accusing me that how comes the pictures that were snapped here, no lady in it. But I didn't tell the chairman, but thank God somebody voiced it. We apologize for that too. And I'm a woman activist, but then again, sometimes, but it's a woman that actually made this. That was why I had to honor her. Let's just know that. But at the same time, the men have always been like this. We'll know how to handle them. We will know how to handle them. Subsequently, one day it will be ladies. Nigeria will be ladies. I bet you. Because we are doing very well. We are good managers. We are good mothers. We are good everything. But why is it that when it comes, look at this one. I wish I would even join this group to snap. But all the same, bear with every one of us. Things are changing and we're getting better day by day. So when we go for the lunch, let's just have it at the back of our minds that we'll come back within 30 minutes so that we'll quickly do the second session and go. Now, the picture setting, okay. The format in going out, because we want to be sure that everything goes smoothly, the panelists, the ones that are coming in for second session, and then some of the presenters we still have, would please go first to get your meals while the rest of us will come behind, so that while they're done, they'll be getting set and we will come in again. Do we get it? Sir, moderator, sir, I wouldn't want to call your name again, sorry. You, your crew, and the ones coming in and the presenters will go get your lunch. As you're doing, we'll follow you so that while you're done, the session will commence within 30 minutes, please. So that we'll all do and go back to our hotel rooms, our homes, and other things we'd like to do for today and get set for tomorrow. But I assure you tomorrow will be seamless. It's going to be smooth. By His grace. My Adamawa sister. My Adamawa sister, oh. Yeah, I'm an Adamawa lady too. From Demsa, so. It's a pleasure. I appreciate the fact that you vent your issues out, and kudos to Adamawa for that. Thank you. So let them get the meal.